Hey guys, Hector here. It's no secret that I do a ton of Smurf content for skill capped on every role. The main reason they let me do that is because I proved to them a long time ago that I can hit Challenger on any role. But I kinda felt bad because I'd never proven that to our viewers, so I went and queued literally autofill to Challenger. Now I did that twice, as you can tell with these graphs, but each time I obviously decayed from not playing. There just aren't enough hours in the day with my full-time job here and my crippling WoW addiction. The reason I wanted to prove I could easily do that in the first place was to make higher elo, macro-based content focused on the game as a whole, rather than a single role. Macro choices are my personal strength, so today I'll be sharing some of that knowledge that will be applicable to every role. And of course, if you enjoy this content type, please consider checking out our website after this. It's the best place to improve at League and start ranking up. We have a ton of premium guides like this one released every week, exclusive to our subscribers, and a whole lot more. If you don't improve while actively using skill capped as well, you can also claim a refund. The topic for this specific video is being aware of signs that you're likely to come back from an early game deficit, which should also help you not throw games when you're the one with the lead. The first thing you're going to want to look at is looking at both teams' drafts. Based on the compositions of both sides, which comp do you think is more likely to win this game? I'd personally say that if both teams are equal skill, then blue side should win 90% of the time. For one, they outscale red team in most lanes. Scaling tends to do better in solo queue due to how rampant throwing tends to be. 2, you should always think about not just scaling but how champions interact with one another. Red team's comp is ridiculously short-ranged besides Caitlyn. It'll be very difficult to get anywhere close to blue team with all of their available zone control abilities. Looking at draft is one of the first things you want to think about to aid in your decision making to come back from deficits. Comebacks generally happen in one of two ways. 1, the enemy team throws. That's how most games are won from behind, especially as a scaling comp. Or 2, you take risks that you normally wouldn't take, like going for a risky gank in top not knowing where the enemy jungler is, praying that you won't be counter-ganked. Or hoping to sneak Baron. These kind of calls are likely to work 10 to 30% of the time, but it's better than waiting for the inevitable loss. And so, the focus of this video is going to be looking for the signs that you don't have to go for risky plays, because it's going to be likely that the enemy team won't be able to close out properly. Okay, on to the actual game. I'm going to be the one playing Malzahar on the scaling team. For the early laning phase, all I can really do is play safe. I don't think there's a single matchup that Malzahar actually wins in the early game because of how weak his kit is, so I'm just gonna let TF shove me into the tower. Now I don't think this was the wrong game plan because I don't really have an option, but my big mistake was not spam pinging Nunu that TF had priority and he was likely to roam. It kinda led into this super awkward bot lane fight. I'm not gonna go into the details of it too much, other than the fact that I misplayed. In so many ways. The game got really hard because of it. I may have gotten 2 kills, but kills on Malzahar pale in comparison to the power Lee Sin got from all of that. What Malzahar wants to do is buy Tear of the Goddess and sit in lane power farming until he has at least a completed item. That's much less impactful than a Lee Sin with early kills, who basically 1v2'd my top and jungle, whereas I can barely scrape up a kill during my own 1v2. So the game is already not looking too hot for us, but after coming back to lane from my death, I have a very good feeling that we're going to win. Why do you think that is? If you paid attention to the minimap, you would have seen Lee ganking top lane into taking Rift Herald. This allows my Nunu to take Dragon. It is a very good sign if the early game team doesn't do an early game Dragon, giving it over to your team. This next point is more relevant the higher elo you climb, and less relevant in low elo, and I'll explain why in a second. Dragon Soul is a way to force your opponents out of their base. If they got the early game dragons, this occurs at around 24 minutes. Scaling champions would prefer not to fight at 24 minutes, so that results in a difficult choice. Does the scaling team give up Dragon Soul, or do they go take a very bad team fight? By delaying the Dragon Soul timing by 5 minutes, it gives us the time we need to hit 3 or so core items, which is when we're all going to come online, and we're much more likely to win the ensuing fight. Not only this, but consider that the enemy team has 5 random human beings on their side. If a game stalls out for 30 minutes, that is a collective of 2.5 hours of game time that these random players have to throw the game. Stalling the game out is very beneficial in this way. Playing at your towers is going to bore Jimmy, the enemy Zed. He's going to want to do a montage play, more than likely resulting in a throw. It sounds a bit silly, but there is a very human side to this game that is not discussed often enough that you can actually actively play towards. So again, it's really bad for them as the early game team by delaying their own Dragon Soul, but it also gives them a lot more time to throw, which is something you never want on your own team. That all being said, as I mentioned before, this is less relevant the lower elo you're playing in. As the early game team, your opponents aren't going to be playing safely at their towers. So you don't need Dragon Soul to bait them out of their bases, since they'll just push lanes randomly for no reason. Let's get back into the game. The enemy Lee continues to play towards topside. Remember to always look to cross map even when you're behind. In case you don't know what that means, cross mapping just means that when your opponent is making a play on one side of the map, that you should look to make a play on the other side of the map. In this case, I go help my team dive Caitlyn. The same thing happens a bit later. The enemy team continues to abuse Gangplank, so I try to go bottom. But my god was my Malzahar rusty. It was a weird fight, but I definitely misplay and we lose way harder than we should have. Because of that, we're actually really far behind now. 10 to 13 kills may not seem that bad, but it's way worse than it seems. Gangplank is so far away from Trinity Force, Lee Sin is a monster, and Caitlyn is about to get free farm and turret plates and spend a huge amount of gold. All of the gold on our team is basically centered on me. So based on the game state, what item do you think I prioritized building here? The answer is actually Medjai's. Everyone knows to build Medjai's when you're really far ahead. The item is so cost efficient when you hit 10 stacks that you snowball like crazy with it. But there's also the other end of the spectrum when you or your teammates are behind. As most control mages, you actually want to build it when you're behind. Think about it like this, when you're losing, are you going to kill your opponents by having that extra Haunting Guise damage? Or is it more based on the fact that they're doing Baron at 20 minutes? It's almost always going to be more on them throwing rather than you doing a bit of extra damage. So when they throw, you're looking to maybe pick up some bounties and multiple Medjai stacks. In terms of game momentum, this is the biggest swing possible that you can hope for. That's actually a mentality I picked up by playing in low elo so much, but it's surprisingly applicable even in challenger elo. You primarily shouldn't build Medjais as a control mage only when you're even with your opponent. In that case, you're technically putting yourself behind by doing so, which is obviously a bad idea. Okay, a small note. Sometimes it is correct to do that, but there's a lot of nuance there that I don't have time to cover, so maybe I'll make a video on that some other time. So, like I said, the game is really bad for us at the moment. 10 to 13 didn't seem bad, but I'm a champion that is just stuck in lane most of the time, while Lee is running rampant around the map. The game was looking worse and worse for us until TF did this. He decided to use his ultimate top lane to kill Gangplank. This gives me the mid lane tower for free, but pay attention to what the enemy team is doing after they kill Gangplank. They just completely ignored the top wave after they killed him. The point of getting kills is 1, to get objectives. They were going to get Rift Herald anyways, so killing Gangplank didn't help there. But 2, to push in waves. Crashing waves causes a bounce back. So not only are you picking up 300 gold from the kill, but when you come back to that lane, there will be a slow push waiting for you, while you're also not leaving your opponent anything to farm when they resurrect. It's actually like they didn't even kill Gangplank. He gets back in time to catch most of the wave, so he didn't even fall behind from it. So they waste the TF ultimate and their mid lane tower just to kill Gangplank, which is yet another sign that the enemy team wasn't going to close this game out properly. I was already fairly confident that we were going to win at this point. It's already 18 minutes and there's nothing really pressuring us to leave our towers at the moment. And like I said, if you give 5 players enough time, at some point they're going to decide to take a random engagement near your own towers at a numbers disadvantage and begin throwing the game. Now you may be wondering, well, what can they do about us just sitting at our towers? Look at the minimap. Our entire jungle is up. They could just take all of it, suffocating us from farming, while also denying vision in our jungle. And then, that human factor I talked about comes back into play, but against us instead. Our jungler would probably tilt that he can't farm anything, he'd end up face checking and dying. Then the enemy team would be able to do Baron for free and be that much closer to finishing off the game. Personally, I've seen that happen countless times. The scaling team usually tilts if you just sit in their jungle and take everything. Also, imagine if they got that first dragon they gave up earlier. The dragon spawning now would be their third, and they'd be pressuring a 24-minute Dragon Soul. But unfortunately, this is solo queue. Let's see what happens instead. Caitlyn decides that she has to prove to Ezreal that she is the better player and overstays trying to kill him near his own tower. Then Lee decides, man, my team sucks, I need a hard carry, so he tries to assassinate a team with a Zillion on it, throwing his lead yet again. The point of this game is to show you how easy it is to see when the enemy's house of cards will come crumbling down. At no point did I ever think to myself that I needed to take any risk to win this game. I literally just sat at my tower the whole game and waited to win. As I mentioned as well, 1 or 2 throws gave us a huge momentum swing, especially with my Medjais. I started racking up bounties and stacks. At this point, we've outscaled the enemy team and I just start pressing R on people to win the game. Keep in mind guys, these are Grandmaster Elo players. Think of how much easier it is to stall out a game in low Elo. If you just keep a cool head, you'll see the flaws in the enemy's actions. They likely aren't playing towards their win conditions, and you won't feel the need to take major risks to try and come back. Alright guys, remember, if you want to improve, then you need to check out our website. We have way more guides like this one that are exclusive to our subscribers and so much more like I mentioned earlier. Also, what do you prefer, Smurf content or high Elo? Let us know in the comments below and thanks for watching.